Hello, hello, my global friends and colleagues. Welcome to another LinkedIn Live. I have a very special guest to join me from Arizona here, Enrique Rubio. He is founder of Hacking HR. He's one of the top 100 HR global influencers around the world, which I absolutely cannot wait to hear more from. And besides that, he's futurist and speaker and so much more. One of the things that stands out, I really love that he's also vegan ultra runner. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Izabela. Thank you so much for inviting me and for the great introduction. And yes, I am all those things. Perhaps the one that I love the most is being a runner. That's the one. I mean, everything else is I'm very passionate about, but being a runner is like I'm passionate about. It boosts my creativity. It allows me to stay, of course, in good shape and health. So that's like in the summit of all the good things that I think I'm doing.
That's fantastic. And I love your energy and you look great. So it is possible to be vegan and still get enough of protein and be healthy and be able to do all the great things, which actually I really want to also talk about that as well. So we'll make sure we have a little bit of time about that, how you completely seems like you're transforming your life, not only the business, but everything holistically through and through. Is that correct?
Yes, things have been changing over time, and some changes in my life have happened. Years ago, like I became a vegan 10 years ago. I became a competitive runner like about 7 years ago, and I switched to HR also 10 years ago. So a lot of changes in the past 10 years, I guess.
So do you mind, before this 10 years threshold came in, do you mind sharing where you're originally from and how did you get in HR? What prompts you to make a change and transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was born in Venezuela and I moved to the US also 10 years ago. And I came here to complete my master's degree. Then I got a job and I've been here ever since. And I got into HR. It's a funny story. I'm an engineer. I'm an electronic engineer. So I was practicing electronic engineering as in telecommunications. That was my area of expertise. And I was fired from a company because I was working for the company, but I was bored because I had all this energy. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to do something else. I don't just want to do this. I want to do something else. So I was doing that work in that company. Then I started another startup on my own that didn't have anything to do with the company. But when the president of the company that I was working for found out about the startup that I created, he got really upset and he fired me. And the reality is that people in HR didn't do anything about that. I had given years of my life and my career to that company. I gave so much of my energy. I gave so much of my, my talents and everything that I could bring to the table. I gave it to that company and they fired me. And I was so upset at HR. Not just was I upset at the fact that they fired me. I was upset at HR because of the fact that they didn't do anything about this. And I said to myself, you know what? If I am outspoken about things in life and I am, I don't hold back, and this happens to me, imagine what happens to those people who are less outspoken, less, inclined to speak up when they need to speak up, and they go through the same thing. And I said to myself, something's got to be done here. So that's when I switched to HR. I said to myself, maybe I want to start working in HR and see if we can do better. So I started in consulting, then I moved to the corporate world, and now I am with Hacking HR. So it's been a great experience.
Wow, you really share quite a bit there. So let's just a little bit of reflect for a second before we go into Hacking HR. Yeah. I love your transparency and honesty. I kind of feel like in the same way, tons of energy, very creative, wanted to do a lot of things. And I remember in consulting world, was very hard pill to swallow when my boss did not appreciate also me in my free time, going to conferences, having speaking engagements, publishing the book. He's like, you don't fit typical consultant world, but that doesn't mean I'm I'm bad consultant. Matter of fact, everything I'm doing, it's helping me to enhance my consulting skills. Plus, I'm all the people person, right? So I can just imagine brutality of your situation, from engineering and service and commitment and loyalty to a situation where you felt ball is dropped and they're just, matter of fact, not only did not do anything, but they just dismissed it, and then they do not take it seriously. And sadly, we have so many companies that are operating like that, that they feel like they own you outside of the business. It's different if you're, criminal over the weekend or drug or addict, but if you are a great contributor to society and seeing you as a threat because you shine in certain area, that is the problem, isn't it?
I would absolutely say so. And this is one catch here, Izabela, if you will.
Please.
Think that you are hiring me to work for you, and you're hiring me to deliver a product that I'm delivering, and I'm doing my work in an outstanding fashion. Now I'm doing something else on the side, but that's something else that I'm doing is making me better at delivering what you want me to deliver. Isn't it stupid that you ask me not to do what I'm doing outside of my work? If what I'm doing, I'm paying for it, I'm investing my own time, but it's contributing to making me better at the work that you hired me to do in the first place. So the reality is that because of the way people learn these days, because of this sort of insatiable appetite from people to learn, to do different things, to get their hands into different fields, people feel this little something, these butterflies in their stomach that tells them, you can be working in one place, but that doesn't mean that you can't do something else. Now, if you are going to do something else, it's evident that you are learning and you are bringing to that something else what you know from your work, but you are bringing to your work what you're learning from that something else. So from whatever you see it, it's all making you better. It's all making you better. So it's stupid for a company to tell you not to do something outside of work if that something is making you better. Of course, unless you're a criminal, like you said before, but that's not what people do actually in general, outside of work. So I just don't understand what the big deal is here. I just don't understand.
And it's very interesting what you're saying. I know the regulations, specifically I'm talking now corporate America, if it's competing with existing business and some privates, the clients, etc. I can see a little bit of certain things, but you're spot on. We have a people that are extremely motivated and driven like yourself. And we use the term misfits. And I saw your post few days ago, you used that word and just resonated so much with me because we don't fit in certain cliches and certain boxes because we grew up in different cultures. I grew up in Europe. I never even knew the box existed.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to be confined, and it's like, how do I coexist or exist in this environment? It's just not natural and it's not productive. And that's why high performers like yourself go away or create their own companies so that they can disrupt and provide much needed change. So do you mind share a little bit about that? How did you now pivot, as you said, with these 10 years of getting your graduate degree, being in the United States, and the launching Hacking HR?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before getting there, one thing that I want to share is this. There is a fantastic research by a professor. His name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote a book called Flow. And Flow, to me, is one of the best books ever. It's a heavy book. It's a long book. It's fantastic. So this is what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi says in his book. He says that when you are enjoying the craft that you are working on, it seems as if the world around you is disappearing, right? It is like, you're doing something like, imagine, people who do something like Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein his wife would say that he would be days without even eating anything because the guy was like just focused on one problem and he wouldn't think about anything else in the world other than resolving that problem. When you go to work, this is what happens when you go to work. If you come to a new job, you have to learn to do that job. So you have a learning curve. That learning curve will eventually get you into a state of flow, a state of total commitment total focus, total concentration into the craft and the job and the task at hand, because you want to master that job. You want to do it well, and maybe, and hopefully you are even enjoying it. But this is what happens. The learning curve today is so much faster than it ever was before, because we have more access to information, more access to networks, more access to knowledge. So we learn today way faster than we learned in the past. So for somebody to master any given skill in the past, let me give the example of a programmer. A programmer in the past needed to spend 5 years in school to learn how to do some programming. Today, a 20-year-old kid can go to YouTube and literally learn how to program a system, an app, a program in 2 or 3 hours. So the learning curve has shrunk so dramatically that if you are in an office, if you are at work, and you are not given tasks, new projects, new ideas, new things that keep you in flow as much as possible, you will come to a point where you will say, I already learned all I needed to learn for this job. I am bored, and nothing is changing in my work. So what do? Do I just sit here, crossing my arms and being bored, or do I look for something to do either inside the company or outside of the company to continue to find this flow that I am talking about? That happened to me, and that happens to a lot of people. They come to a job, they master the skills to do the job, and nothing is changing. The job continues to be exactly the same as it was 6 months before or 1 year before. So what is that person going to do? They will find something else to do. They will find something else that keeps them engaged. And hopefully, if you are designing a great work experience, if you are designing a great workplace, you will want Izabela to now give all that creativity and that talent to the work that she's doing. So you're going to give her other projects, other things to do in the company. But if you don't do that, Izabela is going to look for something else to do. She's going to be doing LinkedIn live sessions. She's going to be doing podcasting, because that's the way she's going to find to get an outlet for all her energy and her talents and her creativity. So once again, going back to the idea of why people do several things at the same time, take advantage of that. Take advantage of the fact that people want to do several things at the same time, and utilize that energy in favor of the growth of that person, but also the growth of the company. And that's what happened to me with Hacking HR. In my previous job, I said, you know what? These guys are only using 10, 15% of all my energy, all my talents, and all my creative capacities. What do I do? Do I wait for them to give me an opportunity which they are not giving me or anybody else? Or do I create that opportunity on my own for myself? And that's what I did. I said, you know what? I'm not going to give up my responsibility with myself. I'm not going to give up relinquish my responsibility with my own personal growth and development. And I'm not going to wait for these people to tell me what other project I can get involved with for me to continue to grow. I'm going to do it myself. And that's partially how I got into Hacking HR. I said, I want to do something in HR. I want to do something to progress HR, but I need a creative outlet. I'm bored. I'm bored to death here. I want to do something. And that's how it all started. Izabela, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, please.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's a little bit of the story.
That is fantastic. And I really wanted to just, as we're continuing and asking questions, to welcome Rowdy that is joining us, the Michael that is joining us from, that also Anthony that is joining us from Australia. So we have some really great friends here in our community joining us to pay attention.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this conversation.
But then one of the things I also wanted to just to highlight, and this is awesome, what you just mentioned, how important it is to find ways to not suppress your creativity, which a lot of companies are doing, and find ways to express yourself.
Yeah. But this is one catch, Izabela, that I do want to convey. Throughout my career that spans 20 plus years, I have heard so many people saying things like, I am not learning this or that skill because my company is not giving me the opportunities. I am not getting involved into anything else because my boss is not letting me do that. The reality is that at the most, you may be spending 10 hours a day at work. That leaves you with 14 hours. I'm not talking about 10 hours a day for 5 days a week. You still have 2 more days. You got 14 more hours of the day to do something. Say that you sleep 7 or 8 hours a day. That leaves you with 6 hours a day to do something. Say that you have a couple of kids and you gotta, homeschool them in times of COVID. You gotta do something about these things. Say that you're spending 4 hours on that. You still got 2 hours a day to do something. So what I'm saying here is that do not wait for anybody to come to tell you or to give you the opportunities to come to tell you what you got to learn, to give you the projects that you need to get involved with, to do something for you. If there are people doing something for you, that is fantastic. Kudos to them, kudos to you for finding people like that. But the reality is that if you wait for that to happen, you are giving up the responsibility that you have with yourself. So do something. And when I say doing something, it doesn't have to be something as in, I want to create the next, rocket that goes to Mars. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something way simpler than that. Maybe you want to, refine your communication skills. Get into a podcast, do a podcast. Or maybe you want to, you want to be better at, I don't know, programming because, you work in data science, but you need to do some programming. Go to YouTube and find one of the thousands of videos that are available for free to learn how to do programming. So ultimately, what I'm saying here is that you got to make sure that you are taking the responsibility in your hands for your career, that you're sitting in the driver's seat, that you are responsible for yourself. Once again, this doesn't mean that there are not people out there that are interested in your growth. There are people out there interested in your growth. And I am hoping that all of you have people like that in your work, in your career, as mentors and whatnot. But what if you don't have them? What if you don't have them? Are you going to wait for them to show up just out of the sky, falling on you from the blue sky? No, don't wait for that to happen. Take responsibility. And sometimes taking that responsibility, of course, comes with, consequences. Sometimes
Absolutely.
you're gonna be learning so much that you're gonna become so much more valuable than you were before. Some other times, like me, you may get fired. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I got fired for doing something like that. But honestly, I would not change anything that from what I did 10 years ago when they got me fired or when they had me fired, because that decision of having me fired, created a number of other opportunities in my life that maybe I wouldn't have been able to see if I had continued working in that company. So anyway, the bottom line here is take responsibility. Take responsibility.
I love that.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think this is such a great, and thank you for sharing those golden nuggets, because one of the main things that I see, a lot of people are waiting to be served. They don't create their own opportunities. They don't take initiative. They're just in that mundane, Monday to Friday. And with this catastrophic events, with so many layoffs and so much unemployment and everything else that is going, a lot of people are lost because they don't know how to take initiative. They don't know how to make a change.
Yeah.
And I love also that you are now not only disrupting, but you're truly changing and transforming something that I already felt for years was not functioning very well. And HR, in my opinion, I never liked the name. I always felt like we're not dealing with the resources, with human resources. We're dealing with talent. We're dealing with the humans. We're dealing with the people. And we're not dealing just with the numbers. We're dealing more with that. And some organizations are catching on that. But I feel like we sterilized and portalized so much working environment that now many organizations are forced to change because people are smarter and getting better at least socially providing the feedback or criticizing poor behavior and lack of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the way I see it. when I started running, I mean, a little bit of my running career, I was a runner before the year 2000, strong runner. And then I stopped running for about 5 or 6 years because of work, and I gained a lot of weight. I felt terrible about myself because that was not who I knew I was. And then I got back into running. But you can imagine the first day that I said, I'm going to go out for a run today. I ran, I don't know, probably like 2 minutes. And I got home like destroyed after being a competitive athlete years before. What happened to me was that the muscles that I once knew how to use were weak. They were not trained anymore. I hadn't trained them in a long time. So the creativity muscle, the curiosity muscle, the empathy muscle, the imagination muscle, the innovation muscle, we all are born with those muscles. They are human muscles. They are in ourselves. But what happens is that for years, we they became weak, and they became weak because you go to school and the teacher tells you don't do that because you got to do what I tell you to do, not what you want to do. You got to do what I tell you to do. Then you go to high school and it's the same thing. Then you go to the university and you're memorizing a bunch of like BS. Then you say, all right, I'm done with school. I'm done with repeating what my teacher wants me to, or the professor wants me to say. But then you go to work and you want to do something and the boss tells you that's not the way we do things here. This is the process. This is the system. This is what you got to follow. So all throughout, the first 25 years of your life, you are told what to do. That's 25 years of the muscles being really weak. So you got to retrain them again. And to retrain them, you got to do the exercises. You got to do the workout. You got to put the work in. So that's ultimately what happens here. We're all curious. We all have the capacity to use our imagination, our curiosity. We just got to retrain those muscles. I wish there were more workplaces that will tell you here, it's a gym for you to work out those muscles, buddy. You come here and you can work out those muscles here because we want to make sure that you get strong, because as you get strong, we get strong together with you. But many organizations are not like that. Many organizations tell you, no, we like you weak. We like you, we don't want you to be working out. So you're going to have to find the ways to work out. And you're going to have to do that outside of your organization. You're going to have to do, you're going to have to put the work outside of your organization. You're going to have to say, you know what? Yes, I'm spending 10 hours a day in there, but I'm going to spend 1 hour every day training my muscles outside of this work. Because what happens at the end of the day is that the organization may continue in the long term or not. And even if it continues in the long term, it may not continue in there with you. You may not be with them forever. So you got to make sure that your muscles are strong so that you are employable, curious, creative, with the capacity to use your imagination, your empathy for the long run. So you got to train those muscles.
I love it. As I love also to use analogy from athletes. I mean, you spot on. What we're not exercising, what we're not practicing, we don't stay in the best possible form. It's unfortunate that a lot of companies are hiring and desiring top-notch, high-performing talent. And as you said, they're not utilizing or creating ceilings and confinement, how that talent can be utilized. On the other hand, we cannot get better if we're not having an environment that we can get better. And you spot on, we have to then do what we have outside of those environments. And sometimes, as you said, when you stretch yourself, which I love it, you don't want to go back. And I love that you said, goodbye, I'm moving on, and I am actually doing something and showing you how it needs to be done. Yeah. So kudos. Practical application, guys, is gold. Talking just about it's not enough. This is how outcomes are reached. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, it's all tying back to the idea of not surrendering our responsibility with ourselves. And I use that word intentionally because many people have given up on themselves when, I was frustrated in my previous job. I was frustrated and I said, I want to do something. And I did a couple of things while working in there. People loved them. But then I said, you know what? The ceiling is already too thick for me. There's no way for me to get out of this. So I'm going to have to get out of this organization. and do something like hacking HR, something on my own. I understand that there are some people that, they may not have this same level of initial flexibility to say, I'm leaving my job. To hell with them. I'm going to do my own thing because, well, you need to pay bills. I need to, everybody needs to pay the bills. But that, once again, doesn't mean that you have to surrender your responsibility with yourselves. That means that you will find a way to do something that will elevate you, that will make you better, that will ensure your employability for the long run. And because nobody else is going to do that for you, but if you find somebody else who's providing you the opportunity, is great. But because in general, you have to begin from the baseline that nobody else will do it for you. You got to take ownership. You got to take responsibility.
And I love that, because right now what we're lacking is obviously accountability, responsibility, and ownership. And as a result, so many things are crumbling, and everything that we kind of swept underneath, it's showing right now more than ever, because how organizations not only let go of certain people, how are they now trying to figure out what they truly need and changing their structure, but also trying to figure out what they really need in order to survive. And they're in survival mode versus thriving mode, because a lot of chaos that is being created could be prevented if they had a better plan or better avenues or better engagements, right?
Yeah. Now, this is one thing that I want to say about the word chaos that you just used. There is chaos that is preventable, and there is chaos that is inevitable. And
Absolutely.
this is the key. We gotta be ready for both. We have to be ready to do what's necessary and important and critical for us to avoid what is avoidable, to avoid the pain of going through something that we know we don't have to go through. But at the same time, we have to come to terms with the idea and the fact that the world is a chaotic place and will continue to become an even more chaotic place going forward. People think like, oh, 2021, I want to get out of 2020. Who has said that 2021 will be any easier than 2020? Maybe we don't have COVID, but there will be something else. Maybe there will be, we will see more of the impact of climate change. We will see more of the impact of some level of financial instability around countries in the world that will produce more, migration from places to places, more instability. So the world will continue to become a more chaotic place where things are changing extremely fast. So we have to be okay with the fact that if we, like, I'm going to use the example of a runner, right? If I am running in one direction and then I happen to come to a trail and there's a bunch of, trees, fallen trees and stuff on the trail, I'm going to have to be okay with that. Meaning I'm going to have to either find another way or find my way through those
obstacles,
all those obstacles in there. But the worst thing that I can do is to say, I got here, there's a bunch of stuff in the middle, I'm not going to do anything about it. Or I'm going to return to where I came from. Those are not options anymore. So we have to be okay with the fact that there is chaos that we can avoid, but there is chaos that is inevitable, and we're going to have to build the skills in ourselves to deal with both.
I love that you distinguish those two things. And obviously, the most destructive, negative chaos is the one that creates the crisis. And those things definitely should be looked to be avoided and prevented, because they're creating so much pain points, not only internally within teams and organization, but also obviously with externally with the clients and everybody else that are involved. So now with all these obstacles and challenges, and I love that you said we need to build the muscles also to deal with that, right? It's like, how do you deal with a lot of ambiguity? How do you deal with a lot of things that are not predictable? And for me, I'm seeing more and more need of very specific future leadership traits that we already have a huge gap in leadership and skilled leaders. We have a plenty of the guys who hold very responsible position, but they're not effective. And then now, how are we going to even cross over in the future leadership, because it demands such a different skill set beyond emotional intelligence, with social intelligence, with so many other elements. So what is your take on that, please?
Well, one thing that I think we have to be better at is at learning skills that seemingly don't have anything to do with what we do at work. So what that means is that we have to start moving more laterally, more horizontally, rather than just vertically. So let me give you one example of what that means. I think one of the things that has worked very well for me is that I work in HR, but I come from an engineering background. So there's a bunch of stuff that I don't do in engineering anymore, but there is a mindset, there are frameworks, there are processes, there are ways of thinking that I now apply in the work of that I'm doing in HR. And there are some technology work that I'm doing for some apps that I'm developing, and the work that I'm doing that I do in HR helps me do that better. So what I mean by that is that for leaders, but for anybody else for that matter, it's going to become much more critical that we are better at understanding that we can't remain in the same knowledge vertical where we are. We have to learn transversal skills. We have to learn skills that may not have anything to do with what we do, but they affect the work that we are doing. Let me give you perhaps one example of that in the world of HR. You
Please.
are a recruiter, you work in the recruitment space, and all you do is you take certifications on recruitment, you go to conferences on recruitment, you talk to people in recruitment, but then you forget that demographic shifts are happening in the world. Then you forget that globalization is a thing. Then you forget that there's a diaspora of people from different regions that are coming to other regions with either very talented people, but also people who lack skills that you need in those regions. So unless you as a recruiter, you are able and capable of looking at migration patterns, the implications of demographic shifts, how globalization is impacting your industry, which seemingly don't have anything to do with your work in recruitment, but impact the work that you do, you will fail if you don't connect those dots. So globalization, demographic shift, maybe climate change, diaspora, migration, all of these things you may say, and I work in recruitment. None of those things have anything to do with me. No, they do. They do. And if you think about it in terms of COVID here in the United States, let me give you one example that I have been researching very recently. The city of San Francisco, 60+% of the GDP in the city of San Francisco comes from the service industry, most of which is technology. A lot of the companies in San Francisco are letting their people work from home permanently, or they are moving to other places. In addition to that, there's research now that shows that there has been a decrease of 20% of rent in apartments, a single or one studio or studio apartments in the city of San Francisco. Say that you are a recruiter for a company working in the city of San Francisco. Imagine this actually. Say that you work for the restaurant industry in the city of San Francisco and you work in HR in the restaurant industry. If you're not looking at where those companies are going to, at the decrease in the amount of people migrating to San Francisco, at the increase of people going away from San Francisco, then you're making a huge mistake because your business, your function will be impacted by those trends. So all I'm saying here is that one of the ways for us to be able to be better at managing, not even managing, coping, if I can use, because sometimes we can manage it, but coping with the chaos is for us to be able to know enough about separate, verticals of knowledge so that we can make sense of whatever is happening. So that is one way. And the other way is, I think it was Albert Einstein who said that Newton was the last person that knew everything that needed to be known about the world back then. This, we're talking about a guy who lived, 500 years, 400 years ago, 300 years ago. And, there were not too many books by then. And the few books that existed at the moment, at least that had to do with science, Newton had read them all. Imagine finding somebody today who had read all the books about science in the world. It's not possible. You will never find somebody today who knows about all the research and all the books of science. So this is the key. It is impossible for anybody today to know everything that needs to be known about anything in the world. You won't find anybody who knows everything about anything. So this is the key.
Google, maybe? I'm
Not even Google. Google.
I'm teasing, I'm teasing, I'm
No, but
teasing.
it's a great example because Google has answers, but not all of them. So, but this is the key, though. The key is the following. The key is that you embrace the capacity to collaborate with others,
Yes.
so that their knowledge, together with your knowledge, make the system better. So there are two things, once again, to deal and cope with the chaos that is increasing in the world. Number one, make sure that you're not attached to your one area of expertise, but that you are learning across the board. And number two, make sure that you are collaborating with others that are lifting you up while at the same time you are lifting them up.
I love it. You are brilliant. And I love your examples. And that just proves, because what I'm doing is creating community of the leaders, specifically high performance, future focused leaders like yourself that are phenomenal in the niche and what you're capable of doing, but yet complement, because complexity of issues are so broad and sometimes intervention needs to happen very quickly. We don't have a time, but we have to assemble the top guns in order to go on mission impossible and minimize the damage and create something that is absolutely meaningful and lasting. And that is why I don't understand, even with Fortune 500, with so much money and so much money allocated for trainings, but yet training on the wrong things. And I go crazy when I hear people saying, soft skills are important. I was like, soft skills are not soft skill, guys. There are essential skills. Yeah. Every single human should have them. This is what should be taught in elementary school. And we should be accessing high school before we even decide to college, and have already established that. And you're totally right. It's a new shift that I see that is being missing and competing for way too long, which is, again, competition versus complementing and supporting and creating community of the like-minded individuals that can truly tackle these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make a couple of comments in that regard. The number one is this. Since the year 2000, more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies disappeared from the Fortune 500 company list. It is expected that by the year 2030, all of the original 1955 Fortune 500 companies will not be in the Fortune 500 company list anymore. So that means that the competitiveness of these companies has become, a more volatile element, if you will. But at the same time, it implies that the shelf life of companies that we consider competitive today is shorter compared to what it was in the past. One great example of that is Kodak. I had the fantastic opportunity to interview Steven Sasson. Steven Sasson was the creator of the digital camera. So I interviewed him like about 5 years ago because I wanted to ask him, why Kodak went out of business if they invented the digital camera. In the 1975s, 1980s, Kodak had about 90% of the film photography market share. They invented, Steven Sasson, who was an engineer in Kodak, they invented the digital photography, the digital camera. Steven Sasson came to the executives at Kodak and told them, look what I invented. I think this will replace film photography in several years from now. The executives at Kodak said, we don't think film photography will ever be replaced. Just in case, let's patent the technology for the digital camera, but we're not going to do anything. We're going to continue to be focused on film photography. What happened less than 30 years later? Kodak went bankrupt. You don't find any people, only the vintage people, but generally you don't find anybody using a film photography camera. Everybody has a digital camera in their cell phones. So that company that was so powerful, was so innovative, it just disappeared, from the list of any significant company because of their own mistakes. So that is one thing that I want companies to keep in mind. And then the other thing you just mentioned about the human skills. what people call soft skills. They're not soft skills. They are, that's once again, creativity, curiosity. They are muscles that we have. We got to train them. And the training is not easy. It's not easy to become curious or to become curious again. It's not easy to become creative again if we have not trained those muscles. In fact, if you look at the World Economic Forum, the Institute for the Future, McKinsey Global Research, and all of these organizations, all of them are telling you that the most important skills to stay relevant going forward, to compete with technology, are human skills that we are better at than technology, and we will continue to be better at than technology.
Brilliant. And I love that you highlighted the differentiation between what is coming, what's already heavily utilized from artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotic aspects of it from, I'm sure, from your engineering background as well, versus, again, some things that are not replaceable. And that's why I keep saying to people, don't fear that, but only fear if you stop learning and decide not to move forward, not to learn. Love also your analogy on Fortune 500. Matter of fact, last year I did a presentation where I compared last 10 years, just a decade. And from those 10 years, the top 10, Fortune 10, only 2 remained last year on that list.
Yeah.
And you spot on. And I said, it's not even worth to look at the Fortune 500 because that completely shifted. And right now we're seeing, if you're not prone for change, if you're not flexible, if you're not adopting, pivoting, you're not going to survive. And I think you spot on. It's just sad because all of us grew up with the Kodak, and it's just sad to see brand and company disappearing and not being relevant, as you pointed out, just because they lacked innovation and lacked the vision and not adjusting as fast enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the reality. When you look at why those companies do not exist in the Fortune 500 anymore, and some of them don't even exist at all, the question is, why did that happen, right? And I'm giving you the example of Kodak or Nokia. These are 2 of the most innovative companies in the entire world. So they didn't lack the talent to change. They didn't lack the talent to adapt to the new world. It's only that they were so focused on the things that they had done in the past. They had been so focused on the success of the past that they just totally missed the mark on the fact that the success of the past did not determine the success in the future. So they had all this incredible talent. A company like Kodak, one of the most innovative companies in history, went out of business. A company like Nokia, like today, completely diminished. Like you don't find, Nokia phones anymore. It's all, Samsung or iPhone, or maybe a couple of other brands, Microsoft and Google, but that's pretty much it. So these companies had all the capacity, all the talent to do what needed to be done. And this is where I talk about 2 things that I always love to talk about when I'm talking about the role of the leader. To me, the successful leaders of the future have 2 things that are critical for them and for their organizations. One of them is seeing the invisible, and the other one is believing the unbelievable. Let me just quickly explain what these 2 things mean. Seeing the invisible. When you are standing anywhere in the road and you look at the horizon, there's a point in the distance, and you cannot see further than that point. That's as far as you can see. But if you bring together a team, if you build a tower tall enough, you're going to have the ability to see beyond what everybody else is seeing. So what is invisible to others, meaning opportunities, challenges, future skills, future trends, what's invisible to others, and the way those things may impact your organization. If you are smart and brilliant enough to bring together a team, to build a tower and see beyond what everybody else is looking, you're going to be in a much better place than most people. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is believing the unbelievable. And this is what I mean by that. There are people who don't believe that in the things they are told. In 2015, President Barack Obama said there will be another pandemic in the next 5 or 10 years. We have to get ready for that. Before that, I think it was actually in 2015 too, Bill Gates said, we are not ready as a global community, especially not the United States. We are not ready for a global pandemic. We have to get ready. Nobody in the right way listened to them. And, in the past 4 years, we basically completely ignored what what these warning signs were. What is going on today? We are, completely disrupted by a pandemic. We have been telling people, we have been telling leaders, artificial intelligence will upend everything in the world. It will dramatically disrupt everything that we do in business and in life. A lot of business leaders still do not believe that this will happen to them. Especially people in HR do not think that artificial intelligence will that dramatically impact the work that they do. The reality is that if you are not able to believe what you consider to be unbelievable, you won't be able to get ready for that either. In 1975, Steven Sasson told Kodak, the digital photography will become mainstream and may replace film photography. The executives at Kodak did not believe that because they were so entrenched, so attached to their cash cow that they forgot about everything else. So all I'm saying here is bring a team, learn in order for you to be able to see further than anybody else. And number two, when somebody tells you that something could happen, whether you believe it or not, give it a try and at least think about the implications of that actually happening for you to be able to get ready for that.
Brilliant. I love it. You're spot on. And it's so many smart people like yourself out that are trying to influence and impact positively and inform. And unfortunately, I feel like there was a long pause and a long ignoring for a long time ignoring the symptoms. And right now, since we're symptoms already here, that is that panic factor that we were talking earlier. That hopefully also will pivot and push forward much needed change and much needed transformation. If you don't mind, Enrique, I know we're getting very close to the top of the hour. I wanted to just ask if you can kindly share with the audience also about your upcoming event, because I just love the way you pivoting and disrupting in areas where you can for who is already ready and who is doesn't need a convincing and chasing like I'm doing in my world around the future leadership. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that event that is coming up so that people know how to participate, how to continue to engage with you, but also continue learning because you share so many wonderful golden nuggets right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just put it on the chat. I'm organizing the Hacking HR 2021 Global Online Conference. We do a lot of events during the year, but this one is the main event of the year. It's 5 days. We got a bunch of great things going on during the event. It's a conference mainly oriented to HR, but you don't have to be in HR to participate in the conference because we're going to be talking about a lot of things that are not just for HR. They are also for business leaders and whatnot. It's going to be a 5-day conference. We had about 550 speakers confirmed. It's a free event. It's all online. And, you just join, you can watch everything, and whatever you're missing live, you will be able to catch the recordings later on because we're going to be putting all that in our YouTube channel. So it's an event. The motto of the event is unlocking your potential. And this is why that's the motto of the event. I believe that in the next few months and in the next few years, things are going to get way more complicated than what they already are. And for us to be able to stay relevant, to make sense of all that's going on, to stay employable, to deal with the chaos, with the uncertainty, with the volatility, to still survive and succeed, we're going to have to summon all of our strength and our talents and our possibilities and our potential to be able to do all of that. So what I want to do with this event is to provide as many opportunities as possible for people to unlock their potential and be ready for all that's happening right now and will continue to happen going forward.
Phenomenal. Thank you. And for everybody, again, watching and listening, please check in the link, and I will make sure I have that later on also added in everything I will be sharing. Enrique, in closing, anything else that you want to leave, specifically the struggling, a lot of them unemployed, and specifically HR professionals that are trying to also figure it out where they fit, how do they fit, what would be some of the golden nugget or message for them?
Yeah, absolutely. To begin with, a word of empathy to the people who are struggling right now, in pain or suffering, either because they are sick themselves or they have a sick loved one or they have lost a loved one. A word of empathy and love to you and sympathy. And for those of you who have lost your jobs, uh, stay strong. Rely on your network. Make sure that you're putting yourself out there. I mean, you probably already know this, but you are in a gigantic pool of people trying to find some work. So in a pool of people where everybody brings some same level of skills, some sameness, if you will, make sure that you're standing out. And to stand out, we gotta go back to what we said before: sit on the driver's seat and take responsibility for your own learning, your own career. There's so much stuff that you can have access to that are free resources. YouTube and things like Izabela is doing, what I'm doing. A lot of good stuff out there that can lift you up and help you progress. And in the meantime, try to continue networking, meeting people, connecting with them. There are opportunities out there. You just have to either do the right networking and connect with the right people, but also stand out from a very crowded pool of people looking for a job. But in the meantime, I should pray for you and send you all my my healing vibes and my positive thoughts, because I know this is a very hard time. It's a very rough time for millions of families around the world, and I hope that we continue to come together in community to support each other more and be better together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you again for reflecting and giving some really actionable tips for everybody else that are trying to figure out where they're going next.
Absolutely.
Have a fantastic rest of the day, and looking forward to see amazing work you're doing in 2021.
Thank you, Izabela. Thank you, and thank you everybody for connecting. I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.